There is an Oklahoma lawmaker who we have talked about before, who has introduced a bill that would criminalize sexting anybody other than your spouse. And it's part of a larger effort by this guy to try to ban anything he thinks is a sin. So the guy I'm talking about, his name is Dusty Deevers. He won a special election in December to fill a vacant seat in a very red district. So of course he won. And he's just wasting no time proposing just batshit crazy legislation to impose his Christian beliefs across the state. And the reason I talked about this guy before is because, like 2 years ago, he delivered a sermon where he said parents who use in vitro fertilization, which, by the way, includes plenty of Christians who can't have babies, they are waging an assault against God. Like, he delivered a sermon saying people who use IVF were evil. And he didn't just stop there. He said embryos were, quote, incarcerated in frozen prisons. He referred to them as, quote, cryo orphans. And he even urged his audience to love their embryonic neighbors. And so one of the things he just did is he proposed this bill right here. Check this out. Oh, there we go. This is Bill SB 1976 by Deevers, as you could see right over here. And here's the part you should pay attention to. What is this bill about? Crimes and punishments, obscenity and child stuff, modifying elements of offensives. I mean, that doesn't sound bad yet. But then you go to his campaign website and you see this. What are one of his goals if he ever got elected? Abolish pornography. He says few things have ravaged the spiritual health of our nation and our state like pornography. In Oklahoma, I believe we can do even more to protect our families from degenerates who seek to push their smut even onto our kids. Like, the hell's going on in Oklahoma, man? That is not how people use that stuff in regular ways. But I want to show you, this is the actual bill, and this is what you see on like page 8 of the bill here. Look at this. And let's read through this together because there is legalese here, but we can make sense of it. It shall be unlawful for any person to buy, procure, view, or possess child stuff. And you know what? I'm fine with that. But look at the next bit. Or obscene materials, or to distribute any unlawful pornography that lacks serious literary, artistic, educational, political, or scientific purposes or values. Like, that sounds like, think about that for a second. Obscenity? We're doing obscenity laws again? So if you wanted to read a work of classic literature that has a sex scene in it, or you wanted to watch a classical movie that has something in it like that, like, who gets to decide if that's artistic or literary enough? What if you're trying to teach sex ed in health class? Does that count as porn or educational? Because there are plenty of Christians in law, in politics, who will say that's not educational. I mean, who gets to decide? This bill never says who gets to decide if something is seriously literary or artistic or whatever. Look at the punishment. If you view obscene material, if you view it or possess it, this is punishable by imprisonment in the custody of the Department of Corrections for not more than 20 years, for up to 20 years in prison, or a fine of up to $25,000, or who knows, by both. So basically, if you're doing anything sexual, this would be bad. There is another part in this bill where it says just about anyone can file a lawsuit against someone who produces or distributes depictions of those acts. It's like a Texas-style bounty law, which means if you sue someone because you think they watch porn or they view porn or whatever, they possess it, and you're successful and that person is put behind bars, you could get a reward for up to $10,000. I'm sorry, at least $10,000 for every image or depiction produced or distributed within the state. It's wild. There is another part to this bill where they actually spelled out what constitutes obscenity And this is fun to read. Let's see what he thinks unlawful porn is. Look at this. As used in this title, unlawful pornography means any visual depiction or individual image, blah, 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 blah. That includes what? Well, sexual intercourse, which is normal or perverted, or both if you're doing it right. Like any type of sex would count as obscene. What else? Anal. That's not okay. Okay, sex with an animal. You know what? I'm with you there. That's fine. Sadomasochistic abuse, which, if people are consenting, I don't care. Flagellation or torture, all right, whatever. I don't know who's into that, but there you go. Physical restraint, that seems very specific. Fellatio or cunnilingus, there you go. That counts. No videos like that. If you watch it in Oklahoma, Dusty Deevers wants to know you're watching it, and he wants you to go to jail. And this goes on to say other things. This one surprised me here. Lewd exhibition of uncovered private parts. Like, if you have an OnlyFans in Oklahoma and you posted it in a way that only your subscribers could see, that would still count as doing something illegal. And all of this, he said, it is illegal to do. You can't have any of this. But then at the very end of all of his complaints here, look at what he says wherever it goes. Where did it go? Oh, here we go. There's one exception to the rule. There it is. Look at the very top here. This shall not be construed to prevent spouses from sending images of a sexual nature to each other. It's okay to sext your husband or wife and send them naughty pictures, but that's it. If you're dating somebody, if you're an adult who's dating someone else, doesn't matter. You could go to jail if you send, an illicit picture to your person you're dating. What about if you're a married couple in an open relationship like the Moms for Liberty people in Florida? Doesn't matter. You could be going to jail. What about adults who just like exhibitionism and post, naughty pictures on OnlyFans or Reddit or something like that? Doesn't matter. He wants them to go to jail too. Basically, every Oklahoman who logs onto a porn site or has an OnlyFans account or is accused of doing those things would be breaking the law, even though they are not harming anybody. And apparently anyone who views it, you could be going behind bars, which raises an interesting question too. What if you encrypt a text message? What if I hated you and I sent you a naughty picture, but you couldn't trace it back to me, but I know you opened it? Could I then sue you for having looked at this naughty image? And it's not my fault. You can't trace it back to me. I don't think Dusty Deevers has thought this one through. You know what I mean? And based on the amount of spam I'm getting on Twitter, it's possible that that whole website, that whole app could become illegal, given all the adult-oriented material that gets posted there. Mike Johnson, say what you will about Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, because there's plenty to say about him. But he never said he wants to criminalize porn. He just said he wants to know what his son is watching when he watches porn. And he wants his son to know what he's watching, which is really creepy. So there was a podcast for the Daily Beast, and one person who was interviewed, her name is Elizabeth Nolan Brown. She's an editor at Reason Magazine. Notice what she said here. She said this bill is broad enough to include any person's butt selfie, for example. It also includes live performances in a play. That would seem to include strip clubs, definitely. Maybe also burlesque and drag performances and things like that. And that's where this is going. They would shut down drag shows or drag queen story hours at a public library, saying that's obscene, even though nothing inappropriate is happening. I think that makes a fair point. I think that's where this sort of thing is going. And that would be disturbing. Here's the upside to all of this. My fear is not that this bill will pass, even in Oklahoma, which is very red, because this probably violates all kinds of First Amendment rulings. The concern is that people like Dusty Deevers are on a mission to legislate their personal Christian morality or at least whatever version they pretend to have in public. And by the way, I think anyone who votes for this bill ever has to at least do us all the courtesy of sharing their internet search history going back like 10 years before they were in office. I think that's fair, right? What's really also interesting is that Dusty Deevers, he's the pastor of a church that is affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention. And the Southern Baptist Convention over the past few years has only been in the news, it seems, because of sexual abuse. So if this guy has a problem with criminal acts that are sexual in nature, like, buddy, go to church and figure it out. You don't need to go to law-abiding Oklahomans and punish them for doing the thing your church is doing way worse with. I guess the one silver lining here is that Dusty Deevers himself doesn't think this is going to pass. He did an interview last week on a podcast, and he basically explained that he doesn't believe his own bill is going to get anywhere, and it's so fun to watch. So check this out. This is Dusty Deevers on a podcast.
What's the likelihood of them getting passed? That's up to the Lord to determine. I am just trying to be faithful, and I've been told that leadership is not going to sniff out. They're not even going to come close enough to smell these bills. They're not going to be appropriated to committees. If they are, I'm going to be mocked and shamed. I've been told that the leadership does not want anything that makes the Senate look undignified, and some of these bills are going to make the Senate look undignified, that we would be arguing over these things.
Oh, buddy, you're in Oklahoma. You're in the Oklahoma Senate. I promise you, it is already undignified. It is not a model anyone should be aspiring to. It sacrificed its dignity a long time ago. But it's kind of nice to know there are some lanes that, like, even Oklahoma Republicans won't cross. So this bill isn't getting anywhere, I don't think. But it's very disturbing that a lawmaker still filed a bill to try to criminalize something that isn't even a crime, doesn't hurt anybody.